Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the first ever episode of Burn the Talking Points podcast.
Burn them.
Exactly. I'm Joe Francavilla, the Deputy Executive Director of the Maryland Democratic Party. I'm a veteran of political campaigns here in Maryland, both for candidates and policy, and now I work at the state party, trying to make sure Democrats both win elections, and then when we win elections, do the things when we're in office to make people's lives better. And joining me today is
Ken Ulman, Chair of the Maryland Democratic Party. Proud to be here. Burn the talking points. I love it. Let's just have conversations about what our party stands for, what our values are. A little bit about me. I had the honor to serve as county executive in Howard County, Maryland, where Maryland comes together right in the heart of our great state. And then I'm honored to be here. I'm born and raised in Maryland, family's from Baltimore, went to College Park, met my amazing wife. I'm all in for the state, and we got a serious time to step up right now. So I'm so glad we're doing this podcast. I'm honored to be on the first episode. Let's roll.
Yeah, so we're calling it Burn the Talking Points vidcast because one of the lessons we took out of 24, which there are a lot of lessons to take out, is that we need to have real conversations. You can't pretend some of the things we're hearing don't exist. Yep. So over the course of the next couple of months, we're going to have conversations with people who agree with us, and we're going to have conversations with people who do not agree with us. And one of the things that we're going to make sure that we do is tell you how you can channel your energy and your efforts to do something effective. Because right now, things are pretty bleak at the federal level. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but it's not great. And I'm feeling a little bit like I need to do something. I'm just not sure what to do, and could use a little guidance on that as well.
Well, look, I don't have all the answers, but here's what I do know. If you look throughout history, parties ebb and flow, and sometimes there's a tough time, and people think the party's dead, and the party's never going to be relevant. And then you wake up in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, you're like, wow, that script got flipped. So you're right. It's tough to see a lot of positivity right now when the Republican Party controls the White House and both houses of Congress. Now, on the flip side, and I know some will criticize to say I'm glossing over, the challenges, which I'll get to in a moment, but 7,000 votes in 3 congressional districts, and we'd have Speaker Jeffries, right? About 110,000 votes in our country in a few swing states, and we'd have President Harris. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have real work ahead of us, because we do. So This is actually an important moment for Democrats, Democratic Party, Democratic elected officials, to look deeply inside and say, where are we off the mark? And somehow, in many people's minds, we're no longer the party that speaks to working class people. We're no longer the party that gets up every day and fights for people to be able to afford groceries, send their kid to college, daycare, afford a house. And that's kind of who we are as that's what my values are. How do we create by working together, by investing in each other, how do we create a system where you work hard, you do the right things, you have an opportunity to succeed in this country? And that's what we're about, versus a bunch of billionaires who couldn't care less if Waffle House just put 50-cent surcharge on eggs. What does that mean to people? Or BJ's, only buy a dozen eggs. Like, those folks don't care about that. The president doesn't care about that.
They do not care about you. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, and so there's a moment here where you see already in this rapid fire where we got to get back to the basics and let people know what we stand for. So look, I'm frustrated. Just about anybody. Maybe you can hear it in my voice, but you got 2 choices when you get frustrated: to go away and and turn the channel, or to get off the mats and get back in the fight.
I mean, I think 2 things can be true at the same time. One, we got our butt kicked in 24, and we have some serious soul searching to do about how to move this party forward and what that means both in Maryland and nationally. But at the flip side, this was one of the smallest wins in the last 100 years for Donald Trump. The Republicans have a 5-seat majority in the House. They barely have a majority in the Senate. This is not a landslide like Donald Trump talks about. So while we have to learn the lessons of 24, I want to make sure we don't learn the wrong lessons, which is a lot of what this is about. So when we're going to jump in today talking about what Donald Trump is doing. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Maryland as well. We're going to talk with Ottis Johnson from AFGE, who's going to tell us what is happening to federal workers. And then actually our first ever guest is Ken Martin, the new chair of the DNC. So make sure you stick around for that conversation as well.
Yeah, stick around because us Kens are having a moment, man. We thought with the Barbie movie it was, but man, Ken Martin as our chair, it's a big deal for me as a Ken.
So let's start with what's happening today just federally.
Sure.
As much as I want to start with Maryland, I think we can't turn away. So Donald Trump is trying to flood the zone. I'm just going to read some of the things they're doing and then get your take.
Yeah.
The funding freeze on all grants, birthright citizenship.
Dude, we don't have enough time for you to go through all this, man. I mean, there's a lot.
Changing the sensitive places for immigration, trying to buy Greenland and go to war with Panama, DEI rollbacks, Elon taking over our payment system, shutting down full parts of the government like rural.gov where people in rural areas get payments, PEPFAR, USAID. So like
the CDC just took down all advice for OBGYNs to share with their patients.
And we're filming this on Tuesday. You're going to see this Thursday. Like RFK is about to be confirmed in the next couple of hours. Tulsi Gabbard's about to be confirmed. So today's a good day for Republican cowardice.
It's a good day for Edward Snowden and the Russians too. So look, it's a lot. And so I think from my perspective, they're flooding the zone to distract, right? So whatever you can focus on, they're going to do 16 other things at the same time because they know that, the press can only cover so many things. So I think for my perspective, we need our federal officials to stand up and fight. And some of them are starting to do that. Others are still, trying to get their neck adjusted to try to figure out, how to focus. And we need them all to stand up, strong spines, and fight. And I know it's hard because, they're in the minority, but there's a lot of things you can do. We started to see some of it, right? We saw some of our elected officials from Maryland go to the Office of USAID yesterday. We've seen folks say we're not going to confirm folks. We're going to, gum up the works. We got to fight with whatever tools that we have. At the same time, I think that we need a unifying message about what we stand for as Democrats. And I talked about it a little bit. We stand for opportunities for folks. And and making sure that we have a fair system, an honest system, that folks are serving for the right reasons, and then all the other issues, or all of the issues, I shouldn't say other issues because they're all really important, but all the issues fit under that rubric of who we are as a people. And I think that's one of the things that we've lost, and one of the reasons why we were not successful in 24 is even though our policies are popular. I mean, state of Missouri passed raising minimum wage, they passed reproductive freedom, but yet every Democrat on the ballot lost. So clearly our policies are popular and our brand is not. And we've got to make sure we get on top of that. And in Maryland in particular, you've got all the issues that you talked about, and then you've got the direct impact on the federal workforce. And it's easy at the highest level to say, oh, federal bureaucracy, well, it's a hole in Washington, you send your tax dollars, and well, these are hardworking men and women who are getting up every day to serve that agency to support the United States government. Now,
I mean, it's going to decimate Maryland's economy. We have 190,000 federal workers. It
absolutely will be very damn for Maryland's economy and those families, right? And so, look, we can't fall into this trap. We can acknowledge, by the way, that not every division and every office in our federal bureaucracy is necessarily what's needed in the year 2025. That's different than shutting down agencies. You shut down the Department of Education. Last time I checked, broadly, we support Pell Grants and financial aid for those hardworking folks, families whose kids get into college who can't afford it.
We support funding for students with special needs in our schools. It's unbelievable how much they're about to take away from the kids of this country and your kids.
Well, and
every public school student.
And look, I mentioned eggs.
Yeah.
Eggs, whether it's BJ's or whatever grocery store you're in, either doesn't have eggs or they're more expensive or Waffle House. There's a direct correlation, right? Bird flu. The CDC now cannot communicate to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So you got farmers trying to figure out, do I slaughter my chickens or do I do something different? And then growers, or all of that uncertainty. At the end of the day, markets are able to thrive or not. People are able to make investments based on certainty. And this chaos, I do not believe that's what people voted for. And so it's up to us to connect the dots and make sure the narrative sticks. And the men and women who work at CDC, work at the plant sciences and research group at USDA, and who are looking at feedstock and all those things, they're not doing it because it's a vanity project. They're doing it because they're supporting farmers to make sure that our food is safe and abundant for our country and the world. So we got our work to do, but I got to tell you, I'm actually energized by it because the chaos is not what people voted for. How many times did Donald Trump say on day one, I'm going to lower your cost of groceries? On day one, and then, executive order, right? Like, let's look at ideas that lower groceries. Oh, I can't do that as president? Oh, it's actually hard? Yeah.
What did he say in Time Magazine of it's actually kind of hard to take prices down? What a liar.
So it's going to be, it's ridiculous. And most people, look, people voted, I think, because they were frustrated. They were frustrated with supply chain and inflation coming out of Trump's pandemic, and we were not speaking to them in a way that resonated. And we have to do a better job, but they did not vote for the crisis. And somebody might think renaming the Gulf of Mexico is a good idea. I don't know if that person exists, but renaming the Gulf of Mexico is not helping me be able to get eggs or not pay 50 cents more at Waffle House.
So I want to talk more about the Democratic response, because one of the things we said we're going to do on this is have real conversations, and I think we've done some really good things, and I think we've done some things that probably we need to be a little more energized as a party. But before we get there, I just wanted a note and see where this lands with you. One is I saw something recently where someone said a lot of people who voted for Trump are about to feel the pain, and they're going to say, I'm not sure I made the right choice. And our response has to be welcoming them with open arms, not I told you so. How do we balance? Because there is a feeling like I am a hardcore Dem. I want people to know you were wrong and how dare you, but that's not going to win us more votes.
You might, I don't. Look, people, if you really truly care about a set of values that says we're all in this together, we're a community, right? I'm a capitalist, we're a community, we're a democracy. We know that some people get further ahead than others, but I think we recognize, I hope, that truly we all need to move forward together. And that's why the basics. Why do we have public education? Because we recognize that, hey, if we all chip in and support public schools, it's an important thing for our citizenry to be well educated. Why do we have parks? Because not all of us can afford to have a soccer field in your own backyard or the greatest playground. You chip in and you do things together as a community and society. Why do we have roads? Why do we have the things that we do together? And I want us to get back to the basics. And whatever got you to the point where you voted for Donald Trump, we want to make sure that there's a place for you in the Democratic Party, because I really truly believe that most people, to their core, believe in decency, believe in fairness, believe that if you do the right things, you ought to be supported. And our messaging needs to be able to reach them, because I believe our values do.
Yeah.
And sometimes we, like any political party, get caught in tangents and we get caught in things that may be important to us, but they're not the thing that is motivating people. And I think we need to get back to that. And I think we've got this great moment, because if people are thinking, God, man, is this what I voted for? Well, we better, you don't, in an election, you don't have to be, everyone's favorite person. You got to be better than the opponent.
Right.
And we got to make sure we're a better option for people who are frustrated.
Yeah, no, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the Democratic response right now. Yeah. I don't know about you, but my phone has been blowing up from friends, from activists saying, what are we doing? Why isn't there more of a response?
Yeah.
And part of it is, and we have to be honest with ourselves, there's hard power and soft power. We don't have the hard power right now. We don't have the White House. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the House. We don't control the committees. We're at the mercy of the rules, which rules only work if people follow them.
Right.
But let's talk about the soft power side. We're seeing some life. We're seeing press conferences at USAID. We're seeing websites stood up saying, here's how to help. We're seeing some organic marches. I see this is Speaker Jeffries sent a letter of the 10-point plan that he's asking his caucus to do.
Let's be honest, right? Even if people believed that it would be rapid fire from the new president, and that Project 2025 would be the game plan. I don't know too many people who thought it would unfold with this pace. And so Democrats, we're used to playing by the rules, as you said. We're used to doing things, or we're used to studying things and analyzing things because we believe in good government. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in the things, the norms and the institutions that have generally made us, the greatest country in the history of the planet and the longest democracy on the planet. And, are we perfect? No, but there's been a set of rules that have governed us until now, right? Yeah. And so there are a lot of people in Washington in our party who are like, okay, what do I do? And I do think they're starting to get their sea legs, right? I know we're going to talk in a moment about our elections of the DNC leadership. I do think that was important to have leadership of the DNC when you're out of power, right? I think that you've seen members of Congress. We've seen our own Jamie Raskin stand up a website to support federal employees in his congressional district, which is Montgomery County, which is a lot of federal employees. You've started to see folks step up, but I think there's a lot of consultants in this town and a lot of folks who are like, well, how do we do that? Well, we need to poll on that. We need to do, not now. No, we don't. We got to roll up our sleeves and we got to step in and frankly come up the works. You've seen where, the pause on all spending was overturned by federal courts, right? So, and then the Trump administration quickly backed out. Now they're doing 18 other things at the same time.
And they might still be having the pause without actually
Elon controls the
which is insane.
Our national checkbook is now controlled by the wealthiest man in the world, who can just decide on his own to shut down an agency and dare anybody to challenge him.
And you saw that's a bunch of 19 and 22-year-olds helping out.
No security clearances,
not a single.
But access to our nation's secrets. But I guess with Tulsi Gabbard going to be confirmed as a foreign asset, I mean, that's the theme of the Trump administration. So as you can see, I'm getting fired up, but there's a lot to do. But I do think that the Democratic Party of Maryland, the federal party, are in positions and will be in positions pushing our elected leaders, supporting our elected leaders to provide our voters and our citizens and our neighbors with meaningful things to do. And that is going to happen fairly quickly, and frankly, it needs to happen.
And I think part of it, too, is people don't necessarily need permission either from anyone else to hold your own press conference, go to your own rally, start your own march, do whatever it is. It needs to be both, and we need to be on the ground with
absolutely. And people need to not be scared. They need to not be intimidated. Yep. The social world is a social media world's a tough place, but you know what? There's a lot of people out there who are now being impacted in ways that they never were before. Yeah. An OBGYN who comes home and no longer has is trying to do screen grabs off CDC's website to know what the latest advice to provide to patients, just trying to do the right thing. Like those kinds of things trickle out into the communities in your own spaces in your world, and they're important that we share information.
Yeah, and I mean, so we've seen, thankfully, Attorney General Brown and folks in Maryland have responded well. Governor Moore, Comptroller Learman have all put things in place to both protect the state and try and get ahead of things, with the Attorney General suing a bunch of times. But again, the hard power we have to use, and we're seeing governors and AGs step up. The soft power is where the people come in, where we come in, and whether that's calling your reps and if they're on your side, call and steel their spine to make sure that they stay on your side and do what is needed. And in fact, if they're at a 7 right now, call them and get them up to a 10 in terms of what they're doing. If your folks are voting for some of these nominees, I don't see any reason why anyone deserves a vote at this point. It's absolutely irresponsible for a lot of these nominees to have been made, and we shouldn't be supporting any of that either.
Get you fired up.
I am fired up, and that might put me on the wrong side of some of our elected officials, but this is what we're hearing from the people, and it's really important that as a community we have conversations. And there's things I don't know. I'm sure there's things I don't know. There's things that folks on the ground don't know, but what I can say is the people are really, really angry.
And also, let me just say one more thing. The rapid fire effect of the totality of these executive orders and these other actions is meant to distract us. If there are some things that this administration does that we support or agree with, that's okay too. But what we need to do is we need to frame ourselves around, this is a moment for us to get back to the basics and think why we are Democrats. Why are we Democrats? Because we believe in shared values that we're all in this together. We value the dignity of every one of our neighbors, and we want to make sure we have a community that provides opportunities for those who do the right things. And if we stay focused on those messages, that is what the majority of the American people and the majority of Marylanders, and so let's not get ourselves distracted, but let's stand up and let's push back and let's fight because we are right about where we stand at this moment.
And I would say don't retreat from spaces either. Don't, get off of social media. I mean, it's depressing. Take your time and don't engage with things that are going to be difficult for you to, interact in your day-to-day process, because there's some really gross things online. But don't retreat from Twitter. Don't retreat from Facebook, from Instagram. In fact, we need more. Get in battles on there. Tell the points. Turn your camera on, go live, stand in the grocery store and point. Donald Trump hasn't fixed any of the problems. You are a messenger in your community.
And to me, that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
How many times did Donald Trump say, I'm going to lower the price of housing, I'm going to make it easier for you to afford a house? All these, even the threats of tariffs, make everything more expensive, because there's no certainty on where you get your timber for wood for new housing construction. Everything is affected, and I haven't seen anything this administration has done that helps the American people, a Maryland family, be able to make life more affordable. In fact, it's the reverse.
Yeah, exactly. So let's transition to another topic that's a little bit lighter. The
Orioles? The Orioles started? Oh,
pitchers and catchers.
Get ready, exactly. Go O's.
The DNC was this weekend. You are one of 448 people with a vote in the DNC race. Yeah. Take us inside that.
The one moment where my vote now really matters to us.
Take us inside the election.
Sure.
As someone whose vote was courted.
Sure.
What was that like? And it wasn't just for chair. There was 3 vice chairs, a vice chair of civic engagement, a vice chair of voter protection, treasurer, deputy treasurer. So there wasn't
deputy treasurer. You want me to do it, or you want to get it?
There's about 50 candidates total.
Unfortunately, I got all this seared in my brain after 4 days at the Gaylord in National Harbor in the great state of Maryland, next to our neighbors in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the District of Columbia, DMV. So we came together to elect our leadership. We elected Ken Martin. I want to thank Ken for stepping up. He was the chair of Minnesota, chair of the ASDC, which is the Association of State Democratic Committees, and I also want to thank Ben Wickler, who was the chair of Wisconsin, who was a candidate and has done a great job in Wisconsin, and also candidate, our former governor, Martin O'Malley, who put himself out there and was passionate and fired up for taking back democracy in this moment. And I know there are roles for everybody. And then we did vote for all the down ballots, and that did take, I think I spent 9 a.m. till about 10:30, 11. You were there for almost on until I told you to go home out of sympathy for your family. But we also came together and talked about the future of our party. And, it was cathartic on some level, right? And Jamie Harrison has been our chair, did a wonderful job in so many ways. And now we're moving forward. And I think there's this moment, and look, I don't think the chair of the party is the end all be all of, I don't think electing a new chair is the moment but I do think it's really important for a party that's out of power to have a chair to staff up, raise the resources needed, and to be able to give state parties direction, who give their central committees direction, and really, pull together our national leadership and our state leadership around a coherent message. And I think right now, with the rapid fire from this administration, it's more important than ever. And we do have a really good, diverse, strong team of folks, down ballot, vice chairs, et cetera, that we're pulled together. And I think the message we left the Gaylord yesterday or this weekend was we're ready to roll.
So take people behind the scenes a little bit. Any fun stories or anecdotes about the campaign, or how many calls you were getting? Or
it was a lot. So I believe there were over 20 candidates for the vice chair positions, and all of them were, good people from around the country putting themselves out there. So it was a lot to get calls nonstop on my phone and texts of, hey, do you have a moment to talk to me about running for vice chair or treasurer? So it just the pure volume. And frankly, it was hard because there's so many good people putting themselves out there. And so I wanted to make sure, along with our vice chair, Charlene Dukes, we were taking the time to get to know people the best we could, and also wanted to make sure folks heard from us what was important in Maryland. Yeah, we're a blue state, but we've seen what happens when we have a Republican governor, which was very recent, and how we need to make sure we stay a blue state. We had a good year this year, elected Angela Alsobrooks and April Delaney and Johnny O and Sarah But we don't take anything for granted here, and we need to make sure we have a leadership in the DNC that understands that all states are critical and the infrastructure is important and critical. So,
and thank you to everyone who wrote in with your opinions. I think we had support for most of the, if not all of the top candidates and a lot of others. So really helpful to hear people's perspectives on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think we're ready to go, and I make jokes about Ken because my name is Ken. Did you get that joke?
I got it.
You got the Kenergy, all that good stuff.
It was subtle.
I'm just Ken. I'm not going to sing it again because that was a one-time deal, and for those of you who heard my voice, you'd be very happy that that was a one-time deal. But really excited that Ken Martin's ready to take the gloves off, get up off the mats, and get to work.
Can we turn to one final topic before we bring Ottis in here?
As long as it's not Mark Andrews dropping the ball in the end zone.
It is not.
Okay.
It is a different.
Because I love Mark Andrews, I love the Ravens, but that was a tough one.
It is a different pet issue that I am constantly frustrated about. So we know we have a state budget deficit, and our buddy Larry Hogan decided to come out right after the deficit was announced and blame Democrats and Westmore specifically. And
Seems like there's a theme there.
the frustration I have about how ill-informed Governor Hogan is about this and just how much he's lying, and then for the talk radio folks and some of the media to pick up his lies is really frustrating. So can you tell us a little bit about your perspective on it, and I'll happily share a little bit more of mine.
Oh man, it's a great lead-in, Joe. I'm just glad that Joe. You don't play poker, do you?
I do actually.
Do you? Do you have a better poker face than because
I've taken a third a couple of
times. I love
times.
your passion, and I'm a terrible poker player because I have no poker face. But let me just say that the Westmore inherited a structural imbalance that was largely led by. It was Joe Biden's surplus. It was Joe Biden's and the Democrats in Congress who were able to fund states to emerge out of the COVID challenges. And Larry Hogan spent that money, spent it, in lots of ways, including, tests that came from Korea that never worked, but that's a story for another day.
So just to set the stage here.
So massive spending from the federal government propped up the state's budget, right? While the state had basically zero economic growth. So the governor was very proud of saying open for business, but the fact is Maryland's economy did not grow anywhere near at the rate that Virginia or Pennsylvania grew.
Like, it's shocking how little Larry Hogan did compared to Pennsylvania and Virginia.
Name a major company that has moved and set up a major operation in the state of Maryland during those 8 years. It's really hard to do, right? And so, we didn't grow the innovation economy, didn't grow. And so now Governor Moore comes in, he's got to make tough decisions. He's $2 billion worth of cuts at the same time. Leaning in with a growth agenda, knowing that you got to get out of this. We got to get out of this paradigm, and we got to grow the economy. We got to grow jobs. We got to create new industries. We got to make sure. I say create new industries. Make sure we're creating the environment where entrepreneurs are creating jobs of the future here in Maryland. We've talked about it for a long time, but now we got to make sure we do it. So Governor Moore took on a tough budget imbalance that was left by Larry Hogan. Not only that, but he gutted the state workforce. Yeah. So he also left agencies
very
unable to do their job. Yeah, I mean, look, it's easy to make the government the enemy when you starve the government, when you don't fill positions, and then you say, "Gosh, it doesn't work." Well, no wonder it didn't.
Yeah, it's that circle of government's the problem, so therefore I'm gonna gut government, and then something happens, you turn around, well, government didn't work, so therefore it's the problem. It's that nice circle. So
the only thing is, at the federal level now, they broke it, they own it.
Yeah.
And so, you want to fix bird flu, you want to get ready for the next pandemic, you want to get ready for the next, supporting the communities in the next disaster. Getting rid of FEMA probably is not the right idea, but that's where these folks are. So we got to stand up, we got to fight.
So just to put a fine point on it for my buddy Larry Hogan, he had a structural deficit that he knew about, did nothing about. Joe Biden gave him $5 billion out of as he was leaving. He spent half of it and then claimed it was a surplus that he created. And then he didn't grow the economy while he was in office. And while he was in office, he gave a bunch of stuff away for free, said it was for free. Turns out none of it was free. We actually have to pay for it now. But now that he's out the door, it's not his problem. So I've got thoughts. There'll be a lot more thoughts about this in future episodes here.
When do pitchers and catchers show up?
Yeah, they're coming.
Go O's.
So stick around for
Still
our
need a number one starter, though, if anybody's listening out there. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, I'm a big O's fan, in case anybody didn't know.
If we get a number one starter off of this vidcast,
I'm thinking.
God bless you.
I love the team with the Orioles. I love Mike Elias. One more starter, please.
So everyone stick around. We're going to have a conversation with Ken Martin coming up. But before that, we're going to talk to Ottis Johnson about what's happening with federal employees. You're not going to want to miss it.
And let me just say, Joe, thank you for doing this. And to all the Democrats watching, thank you. Stick with us. Fight with us.
Thank you for staying with us. I am excited about this conversation. I am here with National Vice President Ottis Johnson of AFGE. We know what's going on with federal workers, or we've seen the headlines, so we're going to go a bit beneath the headlines here and really figure out what's real, what's not, what's happening, and how does this impact you? Because I'm reading all of these stories, and I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty nervous about what's happening to our federal government. Not only right now, but what this means for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. So, Ottis, I would do your whole intro. You've been a union man for 30 plus years.
Yes.
You oversee the Maryland, D.C. federal workers as well as some other areas. But there's too much going on and we have to get straight into it. So you've been in this work for over 30 years. Have you ever seen anything like what's happening right now?
I have never seen anything like this right now. It's like we have been hijacked by a hostile shadow government. They are completely taking over and have taken over and doing things to our federal employees that have never been done before. They started out with OPM, going in and taking.
What's OPM?
OPM, Office of Personnel Management. They went in there and taken over. The employees are scared, nervous. They worry about their safety. People are getting threats often. It's bad.
How far have we fallen where people who are there to serve us are scared for their livelihood because of Elon Musk and his right-wing goons and Donald Trump and his right-wing billionaires are threatening government work? It's insane.
It's terrible. And at OPM, OPM handles all of the retirement. Everybody that's retiring out of the federal government has to have some type of conversation or go through OPM before they leave the federal government, and to go in and take over and do the things to these dedicated workers that have put and given their livelihoods for 20, 30 plus years to come in and do the things that they're doing to them is uncalled for and should be stopped. And I think the American public should understand what's happening to these people. Because they're like our brothers and our sisters and our cousins, our family members, our neighbors. They come from all walks of life. And to be treated as such is shameful.
I mean, Maryland has 190,000 plus federal workers.
That is true.
Really in all over the state. One thing that I was a little taken aback by, and I'm not taken aback, that he's a complete fraud. Was Andy Harris, now chair of the Freedom Caucus in the 1st Congressional District here in Maryland, cheering on the gutting of his own constituents' jobs. Have you ever seen Republicans do things like they're doing now, where both at the state and federal level, they're excited their constituents are losing jobs?
And I don't understand that. My office, I've reached out to Andy Harris several times to sit down and have a conversation with him.
And he didn't return the call?
I have not heard anything back from them yet. And
Andy Harris, give him a call. Let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation, Congressman Harris. You are a veteran. Yes, we know this. He is a veteran. Mm-hmm. And we have over 400,000 veterans that work for the federal government. We're going to need everyone's help on this. Congressman Harris, we're asking to have a sit down so we can talk about these things that don't just affect all our veterans, but our veterans here in the state of Maryland, which you represent. I'm quite sure we have a number of veterans that live on the Eastern Shore that you represent. And to be doing all of these things to them. It's uncalled for and it's not fair to them. They've served their country. They did what they were supposed to do, and now they're wearing their second uniform. But everything is quiet right now. We haven't heard anything from anyone concerning these great veterans and these great federal employees.
It kind of reminds me of when Republicans back the blue, except the ones that beat cops,
yes.
and they back veterans, except the ones that they're going to put on unemployment. So
right.
It's very selective who they choose to back. So can you talk to folks in Maryland, and I guess nationally too, a little bit about like how are people going to feel this in their everyday life? Because the federal government's huge. It's everything, and so you will feel it, but you might not realize that something's federal government. Like, how are people going to experience it in their day-to-day?
They want you to feel that or believe that the federal government is too big. It's actually not. For instance, our VA that deals with our veterans. Mm-hmm. The VA is short almost 50,000 employees. People that need to be able to fill these positions to be able to help our veterans day to day, but they want to try to make it privatized. That's not what we need. Hire the people that can get the jobs done to take care of these veterans so they won't have to keep suffering and keep begging for help. When they've already done everything they were supposed to do and have been promised these things. I know that because I'm a veteran myself. And I'm very sensitive about our vets not getting the help and the care that they need in this country. It's a shame.
Yeah. So that is... I'm incredibly frustrated by what's happening as well, and I hear what you're saying with the veterans, and it's unconscionable that Republicans are making these choices. Part of it is like Elon Musk doesn't care about you. Elon Musk doesn't care about veterans. Elon Musk's a grifter who, if he can make a buck for his space program, he'll do that.
And now they have made him a special government federal worker.
And he's joking, but he thinks it's funny.
And it's not funny at all. He has the right now to go in and almost gut every federal agency in this country to say that, okay, I don't like you guys, you don't agree with what Trump has said or Trump wants to do, so we're going to pull all of your finances. They've gone into the Treasury Department and pull all of our information. Not just federal employees, they had everyone's information that they can go and attack now.
Yeah.
If you're not part of showing loyalty to this man, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, loyalty seems to be the first test.
Yes.
And that's
his loyalty test.
That's incredibly scary because when you go to the grocery store and you buy meat that's been inspected by USDA, I don't want my meat inspector to be loyal to Donald Trump. I want them to know how to inspect meat.
Right.
When I go and turn my sink on to get clean water, I don't want my EPA regulators to be Donald Trump loyalists. I want them to be scientists.
We want people we want people that know and can handle the things that is dealing with each and every one of these agencies. We want people that's out there that's going to be able to, like you said, the meat handlers, the food handlers, to be able to say, okay, this is not going to work. We need people that's going to look at our everyday water that we have to drink, even the water that they put in the bottles and sell. And all of this stuff has to be checked. Mm-hmm. And just because you're loyal to this man, it doesn't make sense to have qualified people moved out of these positions that have given their lives for this. Yesterday, we had some of the senators and congressmen go down to, USAID. Yeah. Because the Secretary of State now, Mark Rubio, decided that they're not doing everything that he would like them to do. Well, he sat on that committee where they had to pass the budget.
He used to be a huge fan of USAID.
Yes.
He used to be a huge fan.
And now he has went in and turned it upside down and want to make it part of the State Department and not their own agency. When we have people that's out there, America is one of the biggest humanitarians ever. They're pretty much going through and see how much money, to me, it looked like they're going through to see how much money they can capitalize on to pull from these hardworking people in the federal government.
So how can people fight back? Because people are angry, and it's not just about protecting our brothers and sisters in labor and making sure that, you know, all of these unjust and unconstitutional things that are happening are stopped, but it's also about our own lives that are going to be on the line when all of the safety that the federal government provides that we don't even recognize start going away. So how can people fight back?
I said, start reaching out to your congressmen. Start reaching out to your local leaders. Let them know how you're feeling. Go to the town hall meetings and express your concern about what's happening. That is the way that I would tell people how to start. Get with some of these labor leaders, community leaders that are definitely working to help save these federal employees. Because once the federal employees are gone, it is definitely going to be a deficit on these agencies, and people can look for all the shortcomings that's going to be happening when you need certain services. You're not going to be able to get it. They're going to call in, they're going to say, well, we don't have anyone here right now that can handle that. This is what we're looking at.
So is there anywhere people can show up to express their frustrations?
Next week, Wednesday, February the 11th, down across from the Capitol.
Okay.
We will be having a huge rally down there. We have all kind of governors and senators and congressmen and labor leaders coming in to speak to the people, to let them know we as American citizens still have rights. We have rights as federal employees, we have rights as brothers and sisters, we have rights, and we have rights to be able to go to these agencies that are supposed to be out there to help us to get us the services that we so desperately, and so not desperately, but what we deserve.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll make sure we share that information with the audience so they can show up. Lastly, do you have a message to President Trump and, I guess, co-president Elon Musk?
We can switch it around. President Musk, co-president Donald Trump. As an American citizen, as a former federal employee, as a veteran, we ask that you reconsider these actions that you are taking towards the American people. You're not just coming in and hurting the federal workforce, but you're going to be seriously damaging the American people, canceling out services that they need. And not just here in America, but now you're looking at canceling out services that we have been providing to other countries, to third world countries that have so much needed our help along the way. I ask that you consider what you're doing, because it's not fair and it's not it's not the American way.
Not only is it not fair and not the American way, it's going to hurt us. And it's going to hurt Marylanders, it's going to hurt Americans. And this is one of those things that people probably aren't going to realize how impactful it is until they experience it in their everyday life. And we need to make sure we don't get to that point where people realize just how protected they were until the people who do the protecting aren't there anymore.
Exactly. So continue. Let my federal brothers and sisters know that we are there with you always. We're there to help support you in any and every means necessary.
National Vice President Johnson, thank you so much for being here. Folks, stick around for our interview with the new DNC Chair, Ken Martin. Welcome back, everyone, to the Burn the Talking Points podcast / vidcast here. Our first guest ever is the new DNC Chair, Ken Martin. If you're watching this on Thursday, we are talking to him literally 12 hours after he was elected. So this is fresh. The takes are right away. So first, Ken, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and honored to speak with you.
Just what are you feeling right? You're now the head of the Democratic Party. There's no president in the White House that's a Democrat. Like, you're the top. Like, what are you feeling?
Well, first off, I feel an immense honor to be able to lead our party at this time. It's so critical right now, right? And part of my challenge, and I think all of us as Democrats, is to get people back into this fight, right? To dust themselves off, to get back in the fight and realize that we have to use time to our advantage right now. We don't have time to waste. These last 2 weeks since Donald Trump was inaugurated certainly have laid out the stakes of this election, right, for the American people. He's already failing the American people, and we need to to be able to get back out there and show folks what we're fighting for at the same time of resisting the extremes of this new administration.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue. I want to talk
Yeah.
about what he's been saying and then kind of what we've been saying.
Of course.
So he's been saying he has a mandate, he landslide, he crushed it, biggest ever, those types
yeah.
of things. I mean, you look at the data and it's not the case. It's
That's right.
an incredibly close election. But then on the other side, people are saying we need to communicate more. We need to tell people about the stakes. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you're viewing kind of how Trump is selling it versus how we're responding?
Yeah, well, first off, to your point about the election
Yeah.
itself, 114,000 votes swing in 3 battleground states, and we'd be celebrating President Harris
Yeah.
right now, right? A 7,000 vote swing in 3 battleground congressional seats, and we'd have Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. So it was a very close election. It was not a mandate. It was not a landslide, but it still felt like it, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember in those final few weeks, people were so excited and enthusiastic. Folks, even myself, who I'm generally a pessimist about elections, right, started to really believe that we were going to win. And part of it was because we saw a record amount of contributions, record amount of volunteerism. We were, I was in Philadelphia a week before the election. We were knocking 4,000 doors a minute, $1 million a day.
I mean, we saw 30,000 volunteers come into the Maryland Democratic Party alone
That's
from
exactly
the
right.
Harris campaign.
Right, and so, there was just a lot of enthusiasm, right? And people were really excited about the opportunity. So it still felt like a gut punch, even though it was a very close election, right? So, but this is not a burn it all down moment for the Democratic Party. There's strong infrastructure that was built over these last 8 years. We need to build upon it, but it's also not a tinker around the edges, right? And so what we need to do right now, because Donald Trump is failing the American people, he's not delivering on any of the promises he made to help improve people's lives, is to remind them of that. Part of that is definitely getting out there and throwing a punch and making sure when he's failing the American people that we remind them of that. I don't know how in the hell, for instance, changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America helps people's lives, right? I don't know how these tariffs are going to help bring down costs for people who are struggling in this country right now, right? And on inaugural day, I happened to be in Atlanta at Ebenezer Church celebrating Dr. MLK Jr. Day, and what was striking to me as I watched the video of his inauguration is right under the portrait of all of our founding fathers were 4 of the richest men in the world, and their cabinet sitting behind them. The combined wealth of that cabinet, $460 billion.
Jeez.
Not the top 1%, but the top 100th of 1% now control our federal government. You think they give a damn about working people? You think they give a damn about helping actually improve people's lives?
I mean, I know these tariffs aren't going to impact them.
Yeah, right. And so you now have this modern class of robber barons who are controlling our federal government, and basically they're there to help enrich themselves. I mean, this is what we're up against, right? And so when we talk about what we're fighting for, we need to remind Democrats, not just Democrats, we need to remind Americans all over this country what the stakes are right now. And so I just think we've got a real opportunity here as Democrats to get up off the mat and do something different here.
So that's a perfect kind of like encapsulation of what we're hearing from like our activists on the ground is, we want to know, like, communicate everywhere and communicate all the time. Like, how are you thinking about kind of the groundswell from the activists of like more?
Well, first thing, I campaigned on a permanent campaign.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? We have to change our mindset. When I came up in politics in the 90s, right, the old conventional wisdom was that people don't start paying attention to politics until 5 months before an election, right? And undecided voters break in the last 2 weeks. That's a really antiquated belief system right now. And the Republicans understood this. Right? Look, think about this. 40% of Americans say they avoid the news at all costs, yet 90% of Americans have a smartphone, which means they're getting information thrown at them all the time, right? The entertainment industry understood this years ago when they started making the switch to streaming services, right? We're now in this new information economy, right? And we did not make that shift. So starting in 2020, the Republicans started beating the shit out of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party on all these online spaces, right? Streaming services, gaming platforms, any place there was an online community, social media. We weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
We started to rev up our communications infrastructure during the election year. They already had such a lead, a 3.5-year lead, and they had already defined us before we defined
It's
ourselves.
like that ecosphere that we saw. It's political adjacent. It's not just politics.
Well, that's
it's
right.
entertainment who then veered into politics versus politics who veered into
Right,
entertainment.
and it's also online communities. I mean, you got people joining online knitting groups,
Yeah.
right? Or online, any community now is moving into those online spaces.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing, and this is the sophisticated thing they did, the Republicans hired people who were already part of those online communities, these micro-influencers, to essentially spit out their lies and their misinformation and disinformation, and we weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest lessons from this last election. We can't repeat that. That means we need to communicate everywhere and to everyone. You know, people ask me, because I'm a hunter, where do you go to hunt? And they think I'm going to tell them to my, deer stand or to my favorite hunting spot. No. Do you know where we go to hunt?
No.
You go where the deer are,
Makes
right?
sense.
It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
We need to go where voters are. We need to meet them at the moment and where they're at and where they're getting their information. And we didn't do that as a Democratic Party,
Yeah.
right? So that's one. The second piece of a permanent campaign is the fact that we can't show up 4 months before an election and the first conversation we have with voters is, hey, I need you to do something for us, which is to vote for our party or our candidate. How do you build durable trust with voters if you're asking them the first time they meet you to do something for us? And then, by the way, we never show up again for 2 years. And then the only time they hear from us is when we're asking them to do something for us. You see, in Minnesota, we call this the Wellstone way of winning,
Yeah.
which is why we have permanent year-round organizing where we don't go down with those conversations because we're building trust with communities.
Yeah.
Why did we lose ground with, we don't know for sure, but I would surmise that one of the reasons we lost ground with so many parts of our coalition is because they believe that only thing we care about is their vote. We don't care about them or their community or their lives. And sure enough, how we campaign and sometimes how we govern proves that point.
Yeah.
So we got to change that. If we want people to vote for us, we have to earn the right to ask for their vote, and we have to earn that right by building trust with communities. So
Yeah.
we need a permanent campaign throughout this country.
So one more question before we break down into just the final, getting
it.
to know you a bit more as, Ken Martin, the human, and not just as DNC chair. But you, 36 hours ago, you were, Ken Martin, chair of the Minnesota DFL.
Yes.
Now you're Ken Martin, chair of the Democratic Party in opposition to Donald Trump, who's notoriously ruthless.
Yes.
Like, you're now his opposition. He knows who you are now, and you're target number one. Like, what,
Yeah, I hope
what
he
does
does
that
know.
feel like?
Well, as I said yesterday, when someone said, "What's your message to Donald Trump?" I said, "Guess what? We're coming,
Yeah.
and I'm taking the gloves off,
Yeah.
and we're going to throw punches.
Yeah.
I have nothing to lose." You see, Democrats sometimes, we take a step back. We don't want to, be as adversarial.
Mhm.
We don't want to punch back. We don't want to fight. That's not me, right? I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, which is to stand up for people who are relying on this party right now for someone to do something. Time for Democrats to grow a spine, get in this game, stand up for our values, and fight for them unapologetically. Unapologetically. I've always viewed my job as a chair of the DFL is to take the low road so my candidates and elected officials can take the high road, right? Let's get out there and define the other side, right? Let's put them on their heels. Let's make sure that they're responding to what we're talking about, right? Instead of the other way around. We're always, let me give you an example of this. Within hours in California after those wildfires started, the Republican conspiracy theory machine started pushing out this BS about the reason where there's a water shortage is because Gavin Newsom blew up a dam to help native tribes save some fish, right? Complete bullshit. But guess what? It percolated up and out to the mainstream reporters. The mainstream reporters started reporting it as fact. And what did Gavin Newsom have to do while he was trying to save L.A.? He had to defend himself against all of this BS.
Yeah.
This is how sophisticated they are. So we need a real-time war room to push back on that disinformation. We need to actually then go on the offense. I would love to put Donald Trump on his heels. I would love to put Republicans on their heels to make sure they're responding to stuff we're putting out.
That's that idea that we can no longer pretend that these online spaces or these crazy conspiracy theories won't get traction because they're designed to get
exactly
traction.
right.
So it's responding and attacking them before they
That's right.
get the traction.
Yeah.
So let's transition quick, just a couple of rapid fire questions so people can get to know you a little bit more. You're a campaigner through and through.
Yep.
Best campaign you ever worked on?
Well, I would say it would probably be my first, which was for Paul Wellstone in '90, because that really
We all do better when we all do better.
Yeah, it really has instilled so much of the reason I do this work, and a belief that government and politics can be a great catalyst for change. But my favorite campaign, still to this day, was '04. I ran John Kerry's campaign in Minnesota, and some of my greatest friends and colleagues to this day are people who worked with me on that campaign. So I'm sure you have memories like that too, right? But campaigns are, to all the young people watching at home, I'd encourage you to work on a campaign, because there's nothing like it. So
You only get to watch one sports team forever from here on out, which is it?
it's my alma mater, the Kansas Jayhawks, the all-time winningest college basketball program in the nation.
Don't mean to roll my eyes.
That's all right. I'm a huge sports fan, and particularly
All right, professional sports team, one professional sports team.
probably the Minnesota Vikings. I'm a homer. I love the Vikings. I love
I'm
professional.
a Packer fan.
Well, what?
I'm from Wisconsin.
Well, okay, if you would have told me that at the beginning, we wouldn't
You
have done
wouldn't
this
have been
interview. So I'm just telling you.
I did go to University of Minnesota, so
What? I never knew
Go
that.
Gophers.
There you go. Okay, how? Okay, we'll have to talk about that later.
and then fast food when you're on the road, go to.
I don't do fast food anymore.
So what do you do when you're on the
well,
road and you have
actually,
to
you know
eat?
what? I would just say if I was going to eat fast food, it would be Taco Bell, because that's my favorite. But I haven't had fast food in a long time.
Congrats
You
to
know
you.
what I do is I usually have a bar and an energy drink to get me through the
What
day.
energy drink is it?
Celsius.
And you have a flavor?
Well, you know what? My favorite right now is the Arctic Vibe.
Okay.
It's a berry blend. It's really good. So
And then last thing, final thing, this is going to go to all the Maryland activists, Democrats, public. Any message you want to give to the Maryland Democratic establishment and activists?
Yeah.
Just anything you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for believing in this party. Thank you for what you've done already to roll up your sleeves and elect Democrats. You had a great election last year, not just with the election of Senator Angela Also Brooks, but also Congresswoman April Delaney, other races up and down the ballot that you guys were able to help us secure victories for. You are a model for what can happen around the nation when people are ready to get in this fight, to organize, to roll up their sleeves and do this hard work. Remember, we're not fighting for our candidates. Our candidates, of course, matter in this, and they carry the torch for us, and they give us a sense of how they're going to fight. But ultimately, what elections are about is our hopes and dreams and our values. They're on the ballot every year, and you fought hard in Maryland last year, and you delivered great victories for all of the folks in Maryland. I'm really proud of you. I'm looking forward to working with you. You got a fantastic state party chair led by Ken Ulman, and a wonderful state party staff. And I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves whenever and wherever they need me to go. I'll be there in Maryland. So keep the faith, keep the hope, keep fighting, and guess what? At the end of the day, we're going to win in 25, 26, 28, and hopefully many years to come. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Ken, thank you for being our inaugural guest on Burn the Talking Points. You're always welcome back in Maryland. We are excited to have you. Folks, stick around for some closeout notes, but thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to Ken Martin, chair of the DNC. Thanks to our chair, Ken Ulman, and to National Vice President Ottis Johnson for stopping by. Really appreciate everyone tuning in for the first episode of Burn the Talking Points. Remember, leave your thoughts in the comments. Let us know how we did. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll be back with you soon. Thanks again for checking us out.